The transport shuttle's engines roared as it descended through the orange atmosphere of planet Kepler-7. Dr. Kim Hannah pressed her face against the small window, watching the alien landscape unfold below. Strange purple trees dotted the horizon, their crystalline leaves catching the light of twin suns. In the distance, massive robotic mining units carved into mountains, their plasma torches creating brilliant flashes against the rocky terrain. The shuttle touched down with a heavy thud, sending clouds of rust-colored dust swirling round the landing pad. Hannah gathered her simple canvas bag containing her most precious research equipment, a bioscanner, sample containers, and her grandmother's old notebook where she recorded her discoveries. She wore plain grey clothes and comfortable walking shoes, nothing fancy or military. Like dot as the shuttle doors hissed open, the dry alien air hit her face. The military outpost sprawled before her like a metal fortress, with towering defense turrets that tracked flying creatures overhead. Soldiers in heavy combat armor patrolled the perimeter, their energy rifles glowing with blue power cells. Colonel Park Min-ho stood waiting at the landing pad, his muscular frame encased in the latest battle armor. His face showed immediate disappointment when he saw Hannah step off the shuttle. Behind him, several soldiers snickered and whispered among themselves, "This is what High Command sent us." Park's voice dripped with disgust. A housewife-playing scientist, Sergeant Lee Doyen, a stocky man with cybernetic implants on his left arm, burst into laughter. "Sir, maybe she can cook for us while we handle the real alien threats out there." He gestured toward the horizon where strange flying beasts circled. In the distance, Private Kang Jasu, barely 20 years old, joined in the mockery. Does she even know which end of a plasma rifle to hold? Hannah clutched her equipment bag tighter but said nothing. She had faced this before on other worlds, other missions. Men like these always judged by appearances first. "Ma'am," Park said with fake politeness, "I hope you understand this is a combat zone. We're dealing with hostile alien creatures that can tear through steel plating. Just last week, a pack of six-legged predators attacked our perimeter. My men barely fought them off." The soldiers round him nodded seriously. Corporal Yoon Seekman stepped forward, his armor scarred from recent battles. "The local wildlife isn't friendly, lady. These aren't Earth rabbits we're dealing with." As they walked toward the main compound, Hannah observed everything with scientific curiosity. The base's defensive shields hummed with energy, creating a protective dome overhead. Automated gun turrets tracked movement beyond the fence line. Through the transparent aluminum windows of nearby buildings, she could see sophisticated computer systems monitoring alien signals from across the galaxy. "We requested additional heavy weapons and combat specialists," Park continued, his boots clanking on the metal walkway. "Instead, Command sends us this." He gestured dismissively at Hannah. The other soldiers exchanged glances and smirks. Sergeant Lee Doyen whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe she's here to study alien cooking recipes." They passed the main laboratory, a gleaming facility filled with advanced equipment worth millions of credits. Holographic displays showed detailed scans of local flora and fauna. Robotic assistants moved between workstations, analyzing samples from across the planet's surface. "This is our science facility," Park said, not slowing down, off limits to non-essential personnel. Hannah's eyes lingered on the sophisticated instruments inside. That equipment could help her work tremendously, but she remained silent. Instead, they led her to a cramped storage room in the base's lower level. Boxes of spare parts and old uniforms filled most of the space. A single flickering light panel provided dim illumination. The room smelled of machine oil and recycled air. "Your quarters and workspace," Park announced with a cruel smile. "I'm sure it's adequate for whatever research you plan to do." The soldiers behind him chuckled. Private Kang Jasu shook his head in disbelief. Command must be running out of real scientists. Hannah set down her bag carefully and looked round the cramped space. She had worked in worse conditions before, on mining stations and frontier colonies where resources were scarce. But this deliberate humiliation stung more than usual. Will I have access to basic laboratory equipment? She asked quietly. Lady, this isn't a university. Sergeant Lee replied. We're fighting for survival here. Every piece of equipment has a purpose, and that purpose isn't playing with alien bugs. Through the small window, Hannah could see alien spacecraft landing. At the civilian colony nearby, the settlers there faced the same dangerous creatures, the same harsh environment. But they welcomed scientific help. Here, surrounded by Earth's finest soldiers, she felt more isolated than ever as the soldiers filed out, leaving her alone in the storage room. Hannah opened her grandmother's notebook and began planning her real work. They had no idea what was coming to this planet, or how much they would need her expertise to survive it. For 3 days, Hannah worked in her cramped storage room, while the soldiers continued their mockery. Private Cho Wubin made it his personal mission to remind everyone how useless she was. Every morning, he would bang on her door and shout, Hey scientist lady, found any alien recipes yet? The other soldiers found this hilarious. They would gather outside her room during meal times, making jokes about her equipment and her quiet nature. But Hannah ignored them all. She had more important work to do. Using her portable bioscanner, she began collecting samples from around the base. The planet's ecosystem fascinated her. Strange blue moss grew on the compound's outer walls, glowing softly in the darkness. Flying creatures with translucent wings soared overhead, their bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. In the distance, massive tree-like organisms swayed without any wind, their roots extending deep into the planet's crust. What caught her attention first were the food supplies. The military base received regular shipments from the civilian colony, including locally grown vegetables and processed foods. Standard protocol required all food to pass through basic contamination scanners, but those devices only checked for known Earth pathogens. Hannah's more advanced equipment told a different story. Late one evening, while the soldiers played cards in the recreation room, she analyzed a sample of local grain under her microscope. What she saw made her blood run cold. Tiny parasitic organisms, smaller than bacteria, moved through the grain's cellular structure with purpose and intelligence. These weren't random microbes, they were engineered. The parasites had perfect geometric shapes, like microscopic machines. Their movements followed precise patterns, as if following programmed instructions. Most terrifying of all, they were actively modifying the grain's DNA structure, adding new genetic sequences that didn't exist in nature. Over the next 2 days, Hannah tested everything. Water supplies, vegetables, even the processed protein bars that soldiers carried on patrol. The parasites were everywhere, in every food source the colony produced or imported. She ran simulation after simulation on her portable computer. The results were always the same. These organisms were designed to remain dormant until receiving some kind of activation signal. When that happened, they would begin producing unknown proteins that would flood the human bloodstream. The implications terrified her. Outside her window, she watched alien cargo ships landing at the colony's main spaceport. Massive vessels with crystalline hulls discharged containers of supplies and equipment. The colony was thriving, growing larger every month as more families arrived from Earth. None of them knew they were consuming biological weapons with every meal. Hannah tried to access the base's main computer network to research similar cases from other colonies, but her access was restricted. Colonel Park had labeled her as non-essential personnel with limited security clearance on the fourth morning. She decided she had to act. She gathered her evidence and requested a meeting with Colonel Park. The request was denied. She tried again, marking it as urgent. Denied again. Finally, she walked directly to the command center during the morning briefing. The room fell silent when she entered. Colonel Park stood before a large holographic display showing the planet's surface. Red markers indicated areas where dangerous alien creatures had been spotted. Captain Yujinwu was explaining patrol routes to a group of soldiers. Colonel Park, Hannah said firmly, the colonists are in danger. Park's face darkened with anger. Who authorized you to enter this briefing, sir? I've discovered something critical about the local food supply. There are engineered parasites. Engineered. Private Cho Wubin laughed from the back of the room. Now she thinks the plants are plotting against us. The other soldiers chuckled. Captain Yujinwu stepped forward with a condescending smile. Dr. Kim, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but leave the thinking to people with actual military training. These organisms are artificial, Hannah insisted, pulling out her tablet to show them the microscopic images. They're waiting for an activation signal. When it comes, every person who's eaten contaminated food will be affected. Park waved his hand dismissively. Stick to your test tubes, lady. We have real threats to worry about. He pointed to the holographic display where massive alien creatures roamed the planet's surface yesterday. A pack of those acid-spitting lizards nearly breached our eastern perimeter. That's a real problem. Sergeant Lidoyan nodded agreement. The doc's been cooped up in that storage room too long, starting to see conspiracies in her soup. The entire colony could be compromised. Hannah tried again. But Park had already turned back to his briefing. Security. Escort Dr. Kim back to her quarters, he ordered, and remind her that interrupting military operations is a serious offense. Two guards stepped forward, but they weren't rough with her. They seemed almost embarrassed by the situation. As they led her out, she heard Captain Yu telling the other soldiers, civilians always panic about the wrong things. That's why we're here. Back in her storage room, Hannah stared at research data. The parasites were becoming more active each day, multiplying and spreading through the food supply. Whatever signal they were waiting for, it was coming soon. She had to find another way to warn people before it was too late. It happened at exactly 8 hours on a Tuesday morning. Hannah was studying parasite samples when the base's emergency alarms began wailing. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors as automated systems announced medical emergency. All personnel report to stations. The activation signal had finally come. Within minutes, soldiers throughout the base began collapsing. It started with Private Cho Wubin, who was making his usual morning jokes about Hannah's work. Mid-sentence, he doubled over, clutching his stomach, then fell to the floor convulsing. His skin turned pale as his immune system went into overdrive, attacking his own body. Captain Yujinwu rushed to help him, but seconds later, Yu was on his knees too, blood streaming from his nose. The parasites were releasing toxins directly into their bloodstreams, overwhelming their body's natural defenses. Hannah ran from her storage room toward the medical bay, her heart pounding. The corridors were chaos. Soldiers stumbled against walls, their vision blurring as the biological weapons did their deadly work. Some tried to call for help on their communication devices, but their hands shook too violently to operate the equipment. In the command center, Colonel Park was hunched over his desk, sweat pouring down his face. His usually strong voice had become a weak whisper. Emergency. Protocols. He gasped, trying to contact the orbital defense platforms circling the planet. The base's medical robots moved frantically between patients, but they were programmed. to treat conventional injuries and illnesses. These artificial parasites were unlike anything in their databases. The robot's diagnostic systems flashed error messages as they failed to identify the cause of the mass poisoning. Sergeant Lidoyan crawled toward Hannah's storage room, his cybernetic arm sparking from the electrical disruption caused by the parasites. "Doctor," he wheezed, "please, can you really help us?" His eyes, once full of mockery, now showed desperate hope. The same man who had laughed at her just days before was now begging for her expertise. Hannah helped him into her makeshift laboratory. "I need to analyze your blood," she said, preparing her equipment. "The parasites are more advanced than I thought." Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The civilian colony was experiencing the same crisis. Through the base's security cameras, Hannah could see colonists collapsing in the streets. Parents carried sick children toward the medical center. But even the doctors were falling ill. The planet's defense systems began shutting down as operators became too weak to maintain them. Warning lights flashed on the main displays as alien creatures sensed the human settlements. Vulnerability. Massive predators that usually stayed away from the electromagnetic barriers began approaching the colony's perimeter. Hannah worked frantically, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. Under her microscope, she watched the parasites change. Their behavior, they were no longer dormant. Instead, they were communicating with each other through chemical signals, coordinating their attack on human biology. "This is impossible," she whispered, studying the data. "They're too sophisticated for any known species." Then she noticed something extraordinary. The parasites were transmitting data. Not just chemical signals, but actual information packets, like a biological computer network. She connected her scanner to the base's communication array and began decoding the transmissions. What she found made her blood freeze. The parasites weren't just weapons, they were sensors, collecting detailed information about human physiology, psychology, and social behavior. Every person they infected became a data point in a massive research project. The transmissions were being sent to a location deep beneath the planet's surface, where something ancient and powerful was analyzing the results. Colonel Park stumbled into her room, his face gray with fever. "Doctor," he gasped, "the orbital platforms, they're not responding. If those alien predators break through our defenses, through the window..." Hannah could see the massive creatures approaching. Six-legged beasts the size of tanks, their armored hides glowing with bioluminescent patterns. Flying serpents with acidic breath circled overhead, waiting for the electromagnetic barriers to fail completely. "Sir," Hannah said, helping Park to a chair, "this isn't a random attack. Something is testing us." She showed him the decoded transmissions on her tablet. The data revealed sophisticated analysis of human behavior, military tactics, and emotional responses. The entity behind this attack was studying how humans reacted to biological warfare, how they treated each other during crisis, and whether they could adapt to unexpected threats. "It's an artificial intelligence," Hannah explained. "Ancient, probably. Millions of years old. It's been dormant beneath this planet, waiting for a species intelligent enough to be worth testing." Park's eyes widened despite his fever. "Testing us for what?" Before Hannah could answer, the base's power systems began failing. The parasites had evolved again, now targeting the electronic implants that many soldiers carried. Sergeant Lee's cybernetic arm went completely dead, and soldiers with neural interfaces began seizing as their brain-computer connections were disrupted. The ancient AI was escalating its test, pushing humanity to see how they would respond when their technology failed them. Hannah realized with growing horror that this was just the beginning. The bodies were piling up in the medical bay. Private Chowuban, who had spent days mocking Hannah, now lay motionless on a stretcher, His young face was peaceful, but his eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. The same parasites he had joked about had shut down his nervous system within hours. Hannah knelt beside his body, her hands shaking as she collected one final blood sample, even in death. Joe's cells contained valuable data about how the parasites operated. She couldn't save him, but maybe his sacrifice could help save others. "I'm sorry," she whispered to his lifeless form. "You were just a kid trying to fit in." Captain Eugen had lasted longer than most. But even his enhanced military conditioning couldn't fight the biological assault. He died, clutching a photo of his family back on Earth, calling out for his daughter with his final breath. Throughout the base, the automated systems announced each death with cold precision. Medical alert. Patient 23 deceased. Medical alert. Patient 24 deceased. The numbers kept climbing. But Hannah refused to give up in her cramped storage room, surrounded by failing soldiers. She worked with desperate intensity. Her portable equipment hummed constantly. She analyzed tissue samples, blood work, and parasite behavior patterns. The breakthrough came when she noticed something strange about her own blood. Despite eating the same contaminated food as everyone else, she showed no signs of infection. The parasites were present in her system, but they remained completely dormant. "Why am I different?" she muttered, running test after test on her own samples. The answer came from an unexpected source. Her grandmother's old notebook, the one she carried everywhere, contained pressed flowers and plant samples from dozens of worlds. One particular flower, a simple daisy-like bloom from a farming colony, had left trace compounds in the notebook's pages when Hannah accidentally contaminated her blood sample with these compounds. The parasites immediately went dormant. "It's not a medicine," she realized with growing excitement. "It's a key." The ancient AI wasn't trying to kill humanity. It was testing their problem-solving abilities, their capacity for cooperation, and most importantly, their ability to value intelligence regardless of its source. Working frantically, Hannah synthesized the flower compounds using her basic equipment. The process was delicate. Too much would be toxic. Too little would be ineffective. She had to get it exactly right. Colonel Park crawled into her room, his breathing labored and his skin burning. With fever, half the base was dead, and the other half was dying. The defensive barriers had failed completely, and alien predators prowled the compound's outer perimeter. "Doctor," he gasped, "whatever you're doing, please hurry." "Sir, I need you to understand something," Hannah said. "Preparing the antidote. This AI has been watching us for days. It's not just testing our biology, it's studying our behavior." She showed him the decoded transmissions on her tablet. The data revealed detailed analysis of every interaction between the soldiers and herself. The AI had recorded every insult, every dismissive comment, every moment they had treated her as inferior. The AI is measuring whether humans can recognize intelligence in humble packages. She explained, "It wants to know if we judge by appearances or by actual capability." Park's fevered eyes widened as he understood. "It's been watching. How we treated you. Your species is being judged." Hannah confirmed, "Not just on your strength or technology, but on your wisdom and character." Through the security monitors, they could see the alien creatures had stopped at the base's perimeter. The massive six-legged predators and flying serpents weren't attacking. They were waiting. As if receiving orders from the underground AI, Hannah administered the first dose of antidote to Park. Within minutes, his fever began to break and his breathing improved. The parasites in his system were going dormant, returning to their original state. "It works," she breathed, relief flooding through her. But as she prepared more doses, alarms began blaring throughout the base. The AI had detected her success and was escalating the test. The ground shook as massive drilling machines emerged. From beneath the planet's surface, ancient robotic excavators that had been dormant for millennia. It's not over, Hannah realized. The biological test was just the first phase. The AI's voice suddenly echoed through the base's communication systems, speaking in perfect human language. Congratulations, Dr. Kim Hannah. You have passed the first evaluation, however. Your species' treatment of you during this crisis has been concerning. Park struggled to his feet, the antidote giving him new strength. We can change. He said hoarsely. We can learn. Perhaps. The AI replied. But first, you must prove your species deserves to survive the final test. Outside, the drilling machines were rising from the earth, their plasma torches igniting as they prepared for the next phase of humanity's evaluation. Hannah looked at the remaining antidote in her hands, then at the soldiers who had once mocked her but now depended on her expertise. The real test was just beginning. The thunderous roar of military-grade engines shattered the morning silence. A massive black helicopter descended from the orange sky, its advanced stealth coating shimmering like liquid metal. This wasn't any ordinary aircraft. It was the personal transport of Earth's highest military command, equipped with shields that could deflect plasma fire and engines powerful enough to break through. Planetary ATMOSPHERES. The helicopter touched down in the base's main courtyard, sending clouds of alien dust swirling in all directions. The surviving soldiers, weak but recovering from Hannah's antidote, stumbled out of the medical bay to witness this unprecedented arrival. The aircraft's doors slid open with hydraulic precision. Out stepped Admiral Kim Tae-young, his uniform decorated with medals from campaigns across the galaxy. His presence commanded immediate respect. This man had led humanity's forces against hostile alien empires and negotiated peace treaties with artificial civilizations. Behind him emerged Dr. Shinminji, wearing the distinctive white coat of the Xenobiological Institute. Her equipment bag contained instruments worth more than most planetary budgets, devices capable of analyzing life forms from across the known universe. But what shocked the soldiers most was how both these important figures immediately focused on Hannah. Dr. Kim Hannah, Admiral Tae-young said, offering a crisp military salute. Thank you for your exceptional service to humanity. Colonel Park, still weak from his recent recovery, stared in confusion. Admiral, I don't understand. She's just a civilian scientist we were assigned. Dr. Shinminji smiled as she approached Hannah. Civilian. Colonel, you've been working alongside the most brilliant mind in our galaxy. The truth began to unfold like a carefully planned military operation. Hannah wasn't some random researcher sent to study alien plants. She was Dr. Kim Hannah, the architect of humanity's first contact protocols. The woman who had successfully communicated with 17 different artificial intelligences across TH. E-Galaxy. For the past 5 years, Admiral Tae-young explained to the stunned soldiers, Dr. Kim has been conducting undercover assessments of our military units. We needed to understand how our forces treat civilian specialists, particularly those who don't fit traditional military stereotypes. Sergeant Lee Do-yeon, his cybernetic arm now functioning thanks to Hannah's antidote, felt his face burn with shame. We treated her like garbage. That was the point, Hannah said gently. True leadership reveals itself under pressure. How people treat those they consider lesser shows their real character. The ancient AI's voice echoed across the base one final time. Dr. Kim Hannah, your species has shown both weakness and strength during this evaluation, while many displayed prejudice and ignorance. You demonstrated the wisdom and compassion that gives humanity hope. The massive drilling machines that had emerged from underground began powering down. The alien creatures prowling the perimeter turned and walked away. Their part in the test complete. Even the parasites in the remaining contaminated food supplies went permanently dormant. Your assessment of this unit's potential for growth has been noted. The AI continued. Humanity passes this test, but barely. Future evaluations will be more challenging. Admiral Taeyang turned to address the surviving soldiers. This base will become humanity's first official diplomatic station for artificial intelligence relations. Dr. Kim will establish permanent communications with AI civilizations throughout the galaxy. Private Kang Jisu, one of the youngest soldiers, who had mocked Hannah, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "Doctor, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We didn't understand. You're young," Hannah replied kindly. "Young people can learn and grow. That's what gives me hope for our species." Captain Eugene Wu's replacement, newly arrived on the Admiral's transport, watched the scene with amazement. The stories of what had happened here would be told throughout the military for generations. How a simple woman had saved an entire colony while being treated with contempt. Over the following days, the base transformed completely. Advanced communication rays were installed to maintain contact with AI civilizations. Scientists from across human space arrived to study the alien technology left behind by the ancient AI. The storage room where Hannah had worked became a shrine to human perseverance and wisdom. Colonel Park approached Hannah on her final day at the base. His face showed deep regret and newfound respect. "Doctor, I owe you an apology that can never be adequate. We were fools, and our foolishness nearly cost us everything." Hannah smiled. The same gentle expression she had worn through all their mockery and dismissal. "Colonel, now you understand something important. True strength isn't always what it appears to be. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimates." As her new transport ship prepared for departure, Hannah looked back at the base one final time. The soldiers who had once laughed at her now stood at attention, saluting with genuine respect. They had learned a lesson that would make them better leaders, better human beings. She boarded the spacecraft that would take her to the galactic capital, where she would serve as humanity's first official ambassador to artificial intelligences. Her grandmother's notebook, still filled with pressed flowers from distant worlds, remained her most treasured possession. The simple woman had proven that wisdom and courage could indeed be found in the most unexpected places. The end.